All right, this morning I finished reading the first novel in the Riftwar Saga, or is it Riftwar Cycle? I'm not sure, but it's Magician by Raymond E. Feist. This is a huge book, right? This edition is from Broken Binding, and it is gorgeous. I mean, the cover, the side illustration, and even the front and back illustrations. You got character Thomas there, and then underneath the sleeve, in fact, one of the best scenes in the book, mind you. Getting a little ahead of myself here. But I just wanted to show off just how gorgeous this edition really is. Of course, I have all three of the books from Broken Binding. That's a really great illustration as well of Pug. And I say all three, but it turns out that this trilogy is actually part of like a 30 book series, and I was not aware of that. I am following Mike's book reviews read along for this, and so this book was actually split into two when it came out. It was Magician Apprentice and Magician Master. But thankfully, Broken Binding combined it all into one, so I read it that way. However, because of the read along, they're doing a book a month, so I finished Magician Apprentice probably in like 3 or 4 days. It was a very quick read, but I waited until the beginning of February, and it is February 8th, so Super Bowl day, as I record this, and I ended up already finishing part two. Now, it did take me a little longer, right, because I'm working a lot, but pretty fast. It's a pretty fast read. So let's talk about it a bit. So I'm going to be spoiler free for now, but eventually I will get to spoilers. So first of all, what is this book? Well, it is about this boy named Pug, and Pug, he and his friend Thomas, they're both orphans, and they get chosen as apprentices. Now, Thomas goes the way of the sword, and Pug becomes a magician's apprentice. So in your mind, you're probably kind of picturing what kind of book this is, and yes, this is a very trope-heavy book. It is classic fantasy, but it actually does a few things very unique, and I would say even modern. So, first of all, when you open the book and you see the map of 𝐒𝐤𝐬𝐬, which is where it takes place, you're like, whoa, this is very big. And you actually see very little of it. Now, I know this is a long series, right? So I'm sure we'll see all of it. But I really appreciated how relatively, I don't want to say small scale because it certainly is not, but we don't really get to see a lot of this world. Now, when I read this book, I was not really aware of what it was about, but I think this is common knowledge, so I don't consider this a spoiler. But it turns out that this world is later invaded by aliens from another planet. Now, mind you, they are human, right? They're just like humans from another planet, but they are literally aliens, and their culture is very alien. So the world of I believe it's called 𝐒𝐤𝐢𝐚, they invade through these portals, and I was not aware of that, and that was very exciting. And the world of 𝐒𝐤𝐢𝐚 is ruled by one particular race called the Sorani. Now, there's other multiple races, right? Of course, just like there is in 𝐒𝐤𝐬𝐬, but the Sorani are the dominant culture, and they're definitely very Japan and China influenced, with some hints of like Aztec and even Zulu culture. The point is that they are alien compared to 𝐒𝐤𝐬𝐬, which is at least the part we see primarily European influenced. So you have the first half, right, is kind of a typical coming of age story of Pug finding his way and becoming a magician's apprentice. But then it goes in a very different direction once the alien invasion begins, and Pug is actually stranded in 𝐒𝐤𝐢𝐚 for a majority of the book. And meanwhile, Thomas has his own adventure in a very Tolkien-esque dwarven mine kingdom, and he comes into his own power. So that was, I thought, really cool. Now the thing is the writing is kind of mediocre. The character work, I mean, mind you, this is a long series, but I feel like the character work, it just kind of didn't really exist in this book. And a part of that is because Feist, so one thing that I really like is it's quite ambitious, and there are several time skips, and I think a total of maybe like, I don't know, 15 to 20 years, maybe closer to 15 years passes by. And you see Pug from a kid to a grown man with a family, all in the span of one book. I think that's really cool and exciting. However, things kind of just happen, and they happen very quickly. Like, characters will say, we need to go to this place to do this thing. Then the next chapter, not only are they there, but they've been there for like a week, you know? So it's kind of very just, here's what's happening. There's not really much narrative work, like narration going on. And so that kind of hurts the characters of it, because this is kind of a strength and a detriment. The characters are all laid out very clearly and cleanly. Like, a character will come in and Feist will give like a paragraph explaining, you know, this is who they are, this is what they look like, and this is kind of like how they act or their ambition. Okay, and then we kind of just, okay, let's get the story going, right? So if you're looking for like rich character work or prose, you're not going to find it here. What you are going to find is a very well developed world. I mean, Feist's world building skills for a book I believe was written in 77, published in 82 by a first time author. This world building is really immaculate, I would even say. And definitely kind of like on a Sandersonian level. Now, I understand that this was apparently based on a D&D campaign that Feist ran for several years, and part of that was the invasion of another tabletop fantasy race. I don't know, I'm not familiar with that tabletop, but I believe it was another campaign setting that they invaded, so he kind of adapted that and made it into his own thing. And so because of that, we get two worlds that are very well developed, and Feist spends a lot of time creating these worlds and exploring them. It's just not really through the characters, it's more through just the plot. The plot is very ambitious and very large scale, and we go across several areas and we learn about the world more that way. So that was all really great. One thing that was dissatisfying to me, and it was kind of losing me a bit, I would say, in the middle of the book, so kind of basically like the first third of Magician Master, if you're reading the separate books, is our two central characters, Pug and Thomas. Mind you, there's a very large time skip, but when we get back to them, it's like they're totally different characters, and they developed in ways I didn't really want and didn't really like. Now, thankfully, without going too much into spoilers, their character arcs kind of come around again. But that also leads to another issue with the book where there's not really much consequence, right? So like something will happen, but then characters kind of quickly recover from it. Or something major happens and characters might not even acknowledge it fully. So that happens with Thomas and Pug with their characters, and mind you, they eventually do find their way back, but then it's like, what was kind of the point, right? If we're kind of undoing these arcs. Now, again, this is one book out of like 30, and I believe Pug is in a majority of them, although I know he's not really the main character of them. So I don't know, right? I'm just reading this right now as just it's one book. As it's one book, it is fairly standalone. I was not expecting the plot to wrap up as cleanly as it does. I mean, I'll save that more for the spoiler section. But in terms of anything else, I mean, again, if you want classic fantasy with a bit of modern, this is a really good place to be. It's not particularly great, and it's maybe if you're used to, you know, like Malazan or something, you're probably going to roll your eyes at this. I personally found the trope heavy, simplistic narrative kind of refreshing, actually, especially, you know, someone that has gone through a significant portion of Malazan. Not finished yet, I will. That was actually kind of nice. There's a lot of stuff that I really like that was kind of more present in Apprentice first half than Master. Like, I really liked Colgan and Father Tully. So you have this like wise old magician and then this wise old priest, and I like that they kind of butt heads, and then they're kind of absent for most of the book as the years go on, right? Something that was I was kind of getting red flags right off the bat, but thankfully it turned out nice, is there's what appears to be a love triangle very early on between Pug, the princess Carline, and then a character I haven't mentioned yet, Roland. And I was kind of rolling my eyes like, okay, here we go. And actually, the resolution of that I thought was quite mature and actually modern. And I really liked that. However, that does actually lead to a fairly big negative that I have, which I will save for spoilers. And I feel like I've been saying that a few times. So I think I'm going to wrap up the spoiler-free part here. So guys, this is like a 900-page book, and honestly, it flew by. The story is very fast-paced. The action is it's there, but it's written kind of minimally, right? It's not like Robert Jordan going, step by step. This is the way he held the sword, and this is the movements, art that he used, the martial arts, right? It's not like that, which I do actually like that about Jordan, but it does get a little tedious when his books are already very action heavy, and the action takes a long time because of that. That doesn't happen here. It's kind of the opposite, where it happens a little too quickly. But if you want that, if you want just a kind of light breeze kind of story, has a lot of original ideas, it's kind of in the middle, right, of the classic world and the modern world. I think you could do a lot worse than Magician. I am a little critical of this book, but it is very highly praised. It's considered a classic. I'm sure if you grew up with it, you will have a lot of heart for this book, and I can see why. It's a classic story, and it's told in a very good way. So I would say, yeah, it's very good. If I were to give it points, arbitrary rating, I think probably like a 7 out of 10, kind of like a light 7. I did like it, but it didn't blow me away, right? It's kind of a lot of this stuff I had experienced before, right? Okay, so that's your warning, right? So, hey, right under 12 minutes, great. So the rest of this will be spoiler discussion, okay? So going back to the comment I made earlier about the love triangle, I really like that Pug and Roland were able to work it out maturely, and Pug ends up stranded in that other world anyways, so he doesn't really get an opportunity to miss Carline, and he ends up actually having an affair with another slave, right, because he's enslaved by the Serani, and later on he goes back to her and finds out that she's alive, and she actually, from their stands, right, has a son with him. And she kind of just is super happy he's back. Oh, I thought I lost you, crying. And I don't know, I feel like if I would want a little bit more drama between them, right? Like, she was a slave that became pregnant and then had to raise a child, right? And I understand that Pug had no choice in that because he was taken by the black, what do they call them? The Great Ones, the Black Robes. But that didn't even really get a chance to come up. She just kind of threw herself into his arms, and that was very different from Carline and Roland, who I thought had a very good romance, a very realistic romance, and then Roland just dies off screen, like almost immediately after. It was like, wait, what? And not only that, but I felt like, well, especially Pug, because he's gone, but when he comes back, and then with Carline, they didn't really get a chance to mourn him, and I thought it was kind of like in poor taste, honestly. I really liked Roland. Was he flawed? Yeah, but that's what made him interesting, right? And so, like, I don't know what Feist was trying to do or say with that. I don't know if he was kind of making fun of him, because he dies, like, very pointlessly. If I remember correctly, he, like, just tried defending some cows from a couple stray soldiers, and they shot him with an arrow. It was, like, very pathetic off-screen death for a character that I liked. Was I in the wrong for liking him? I liked him quite a bit. So that was pretty upsetting and frankly pointless, because then Carline ends up swooning over, I believe, Lori at the end of the book anyway. So it's like, oh, well, okay, great. It's kind of like a recurring thing in this book, and maybe for the whole series. I've heard a couple comments. The female characters really aren't that great, and that's just like how it is. Sure, whatever. If that bothers you, yeah, that's gonna bother you. It did bother me a little bit, just because it was like, but that's not even the worst offense. The worst offense is with the elf queen, I'm already forgetting her name. She just exits the story. She had a very cool introduction in Magician Apprentice, and there's these like kind of weird comments from Thomas. He's just like in love with her, and mind you, Thomas is very young, and she's like at least a few hundred years old. And then after Thomas's little encounter with the dragon in the mine, and then he gets this basically like cursed dragon armor. He puts it on, and now and that was a really cool element I liked. He's living kind of these dual lives, sort of like Matt Cawthon in The Wheel of Time, where he has inherited these memories of this great fearsome warrior, right? And he's kind of becoming possessed by him, almost like Elm Street 2 or something. And he's like fearsome, and he ends up taking the Elf Queen as his wife. And there's this kind of strange moment where she kind of seems like maybe she wants that, and then later she's like, no, like I'm afraid, right? So it was like, I thought it was interesting, right? Thomas is becoming this villain, and then he just kind of snaps out of it. And I mean, he still is, wearing the armor. He still has amassed this control of the elf people. I mean, he does end up relinquishing some of it to her son, which was obviously the good thing to do. But I don't know, it was like really weird. And again, there wasn't really much consequence to that, right? And that's similarly with Pug. The book kind of peaks a little too early with the scene where Pug finally stands his ground, and he rejects the Serani people. He rejects the Great Ones. He's like, I am not like you, because they're doing this like cruel ritual basically. And he basically snaps and just rains down lightning bolts and just obliterates all these people, just sets them all on fire. And then he leaves. He ends up being able to go back to Midkima with his whole family, and Lori and a few others tag along. And then I don't know, there just wasn't really much consequence. Then he's like, well, I'm back. And he kind of starts to go back to his old self. He gets to meet up with old faces. And that was a little strange. And then after that's probably the most exciting part, right? And we still have a bit, not a lot, but a bit left. And then the war kind of just resolves very quickly because of there's a lot of politicking with the Serani. I didn't really mention that. I like that stuff, actually. It was very interesting, like the different houses and such. But basically, the Emperor actually wants peace, and it's these other parties that want war. But the Emperor ends up sneaking in a diplomat, and they make peace. And it's like, oh, yay, we made peace. And it was kind of just, just like really quick. Now, mind you, then we get the reveal of Macross the Black, this kind of suspicious figure that we saw way early on, comes back, and it turns out he was the mastermind. He's kind of this mustache-twirling villain, and he, like, set everything up. Like, he made it so that Thomas would find the cursed armor, and so on. And to what end? I don't know. I'm sure we'll get that answered. I think that he purposefully started this war so that Pug, or really any magician, but Pug was the one with the most potential, Pug would get stranded into that world and learn that old magic. Because the magic in 𝐒𝐤𝐚𝐥 is different from the magic in Midkemia. And so I think Macross wants him to get that best of both worlds, maybe for his own gain later on. I don't know. But Macross ends up doing some trickery and makes the Serani and the Midkemians have like a last fight. But again, the action's not super impressive or exciting, and then it just kind of ends. It ends with this drama with, I didn't even mention, but Orutha and not Roderick's the dad, Liam. Orutha and Liam are the sons of the king, who's like crazy. Basically, he loses his mind, and then coincidentally before death he regains his sanity, and basically reveals that this ranger character Martin was his bastard child. And so Martin actually does have the right to the throne, not Orutha. Liam. Orutha gives Liam the crown, and then there's like some drama, like, oh no, but Martin actually has the right because he was acknowledged as his son at the end. Oh no, if he gets the crown, there's gonna be war. And then Martin comes and he's like, no, it's fine, you can have the crown. So it was kind of just this, I'm sure if I cared about the characters more, that would have mattered. but again, not really any consequence. Just like things happen and then they kind of quickly resolve. There's a section of the book where Arutha is doing this kind of uh, espionage type stuff in another kingdom. There's some near civil war with the 𝐒𝐸𝐚ians, I believe his name is like Guy the Black or something, but he goes into this town and he encounters these like roguish thieves. One of which, Jimmy the Hand, not a very big role here, but from what I understand, he's like the fan favorite character, and he is in several of the books from this point on. And so it was. I don't know. I like rogue stuff, so that aspect was cool. There's also this cool pirate named Amos that helps him out a little bit before that and then during. But Arutha himself just like didn't really care for him, and I think he's like another present figure. So again, like that finale just didn't really hit for me. The stuff with Pug breaking free of the Great Ones, that was very exciting and visceral and climactic, and then it just kind of deflates and we just have all these like side projects. And then it ends like very neatly. It actually ends with like a joke, which I didn't mind. I thought it was a nice little happy ending of Amos leaving off and stealing the king's ship. I thought that was funny because again, I liked Amos as a character. He felt very much like a Wheel of Time character. You know, like I'm forgetting his name, the pirate Bail Domon, that was his name. Anyways, I'm just kind of rambling now. So like, I sound very critical of this book because I did have some major issues with it, but ultimately it is fun. It is light. It's not trying to be the next big thing, although it was very successful. And I can see why this feels like it was the blueprint for, you know, the people that would come, like Brandon Sanderson, right? It's very simple prose, very accessible, whimsical, and but at the same time, there is some merit to this. The world is really cool. The gimmick is awesome. Like everything with the Serani is fantastic. I love that part of the book. And I wish I could love more of the book, but as it stands, I just kind of liked it. I mean, I certainly liked it more than King Sorrow, which I was gonna make a video to review that, and I just like forgot because I kind of stopped caring. But I think I might do that anyways. Thankfully, I like wrote out a review for that one because I knew I would forget the books very like in one year out the other. That might piss off some people. I don't know, but anyways, that's it, I guess, for Magician. So we'll read Silverthorn. I'm gonna wait until March though. Till then, I have started Shannara because I'm going to get the chance to meet Terry Brooks because he's doing Ryan Cahill speak in Seattle that I'm going to. So I want to read at least that trilogy, right, by March. So we'll see about that. But anyways, Magician, if you are watching this from the Mike's Discord channel, hello. I'll pop in there with my comments after, and I can't wait to discuss this because I don't know how the reaction will be, right? But we'll see. All right. Thank you for watching as always, and please like and subscribe. Trying to grow this channel. I could have put this on my main channel, but because I have like 70,000 subscribers or something. But I just like I'm sorry. It kind of pisses me off the comments I get on those videos. So it's like, yeah, I get it. I made that one video, but I actually want to do something serious and talk about these books that I like. So please help me grow that channel, and don't give me ideas to migrate back to my old one. Okay. Peace.